Hello, everyone. My name is David Goltra, and I'm the Director of Communications for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in this area. We're here at the Gibbs Museum today, and we would like to reach out and thank them for their willingness to let us use this space for this event. We're here to tell the story today of one Private Thomas J. Martin, an African-American police officer gunned down in the line of duty shortly after the end of the Civil War on July 22, 1870. I was approached a few months ago by a group of individuals led by Chief Luther Reynolds of the Charleston Police Department, who was endeavoring to go back and bestow upon Private Martin the honors and the recognition that he was deserved for his service and sacrifice to our city, which had been denied him by history. The other object of my endeavor was to determine whether or not Thomas Martin had any living descendants so that they could share in the honor and the events that took place to give him the recognition that he so richly deserved. I immediately turned to Delsa Bjorn, who is the director of the Family History Center for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in Charleston. The church created and supports an organization called Family Search. And Family Search is responsible for obtaining, for maintaining, for digitizing, and ultimately sharing what is the largest collection of historical and genealogic records on the face of the earth today. I turned to Delsa, who reached out to Grant Mishu of the Gullah Society, and they were successful in identifying Thomas Martin's living descendants, most notably Joanna Martin, who is a great citizen of our city, chairman of the Jenkins Orphanage Board of Directors, and who is in fact his great-great-granddaughter and will soon celebrate her 90th birthday. What an amazing feeling that was to call her and tell her of the amazing service of her great-great-grandfather and this opportunity that we now have to recognize him. Since we've discovered this information, Thomas Martin has been inducted into the South Carolina Law Enforcement Hall of Fame, and his name has been engraved on the Fallen Police Officer Memorial at Brittlebank Park. It's seldom in doing genealogic work that we get an opportunity to use the information that we acquire to in some way heal or begin to mend a tear in the fabric of our civic and our cultural history. And that's what we're doing here today. Following comments from Grant Mishu and Delsa Bjorn, Reverend Dr. Kylon Middleton, a good friend and brother, will summarize these events and put them into the context of our current situation here in 2020 with riots in the streets, with social unrest, with a culture that has been poisoned with racism, inequality, injustice. We seek to root out those poisons from our culture. That's what we're here for today.
Hi, I am Delsa Bjorn. My husband David and I are the directors of the Family History Center run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are in Charleston. I was so excited to get this project when I was given it because I've done African American genealogy going back to the days of slavery but never coming forward, so that was a challenge. The other thing what was a challenge was the fact that the libraries were all shut down. I know the resources they have, but I couldn't get in to use them, so that delayed the research a little bit. In 1973, somebody asked me where my genealogy was. And I said, what's that? And I've been doing genealogy ever since. There's a whole bunch of people that worked on this project that we want to remember, and it's Grant Mishu of the Gullah Society genealogist, and Sarah Nesnow, who is a historian, and Mary Ann Colley, who works at the Charleston Genealogy Library on the second floor, and Ashaya Hakai, who is the Avery Research Center that helped me. I couldn't get into these facilities, so they did the research for me. Thomas J. Martin had wonderful sources of newspaper records. There were African American newspapers back in the days when he was shot in 1870. And what was most admirable about it was they felt so bad with him leaving a wife and 5 children. So they took up a collection for him. And I found it interesting that he was still included in the census record even though he'd passed away. The trial happened right after he died. They were at trial in the month of August. And it was very interesting to read everybody's story of what happened that evening at 11:45. Of his 5 children, Edward Martin was the youngest one, and he was the only one anybody could find. And there were 2 Edward Martins in South Carolina, one here and one in Greenville, because the family migrated to Lincolnville, and that was very interesting to do the history of Lincolnville. 7 African American men in Charleston put their money together, their resources, and came up with $1,000. And they bought some land up in Lincolnville and called it Lincolnville after Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves. So Thomas Martin's wife, Frances, took the kids and moved up to Lincolnville. And it was interesting, in the 1880 census, it mentions that she has dropsy. And dropsy today is known as gout. So she was not in good condition. Edward Martin's wife was Mary. And her father was B.K. Singleton, which I found out was Bell Kit Singleton. So when Edward Martin died in 1911, Mary took the kids and she remarried a Jack Toomer. And how you know that's the children is because the children are listed as stepchildren. Edward and Mary had a child, Samuel Martin, Sr. And what I found very interesting, when you look at Samuel Martin in the census records and all of his children, he had quite a few children, but he had a Samuel Martin that died early, and then he had a Samuel Martin as one of his last of his children. So one was called the second, one was called the third. That is an African American thing. The other thing I learned is that after the Civil War, you could take whatever last name you wanted. So some of the children were Hunts, but then changed their last name to Martin. He left a good trail and had very many children. So when I got to this point, I said, how can I find descendants coming forward more into the 2020? And so I thought of our dear old friend, Weavenita Minus, who passed away a couple months ago, and we dearly miss her. If I could ask her what to do, she would say, call the Gullah Society. So I called the Gullah Society, and the man that answered the phone said he never answers the phone when he doesn't know who the caller ID is. But for some reason, he answered it, which is a miracle. I told him what I was doing, and he said he would have somebody call me back, that they had a genealogist. So later on that day, I got a call from Grant Mishu, and I said, do you know any Martins? And he got so excited, and he put us in contact with Joanna Martin Carrington, and she is a descendant of Edward Martin, who is the son of Thomas J. Martin. So she was so great to know that her ancestor did this. Joanna Martin Carrington has a family history of being in the police department. Her husband was the first African American police chief in Compton, California. It's been a privilege to do this genealogy for this family, and I've grown to love them by doing this. Miss Joanna has also broken the chain. Thomas Martin died when he was 50. His son, Edward Martin, died when he was 50. And his son, Samuel Martin, died when he was 49. And Miss Carrington is now 89 years old, so she has broken the chain in the family. Thank you.
The atmosphere in Charleston during that period of time had been changing ever since emancipation. Thomas Martin was one of several African American and African descendant police officers on the police force. There was a big turn. Charleston was a changing place at the time because there were several police officers on the force of African American and African descent. And also at the time, the city of Charleston had incorporated multiple all-black volunteer fire companies that were product from the remains of the original ward engines that were part of the fire department previous to emancipation in 1865. The night that Thomas Martin died, he was on his regular patrol, which was King Street below Calhoun, around the Burns Alley area. He had originally come in contact with a group of soldiers who were being drunk and disorderly from the 8th U.S. Infantry. And he had spoke with several of them to tell them to quiet down, of which one of them had come in contact with them and talked to him personally and said, yes, we'll do this, and that not to worry, we'll take care of it. Later on, the rowdiness continued on, and he had gone there to break it up. Later on, he had approached the group again, who had not quieted down, and within that group was a sergeant of the 8th U.S. Infantry named William Johnson. William Johnson had, according to witness testimony in the coroner's inquest the 2 days after the murder, had spoken to several people, said that he is going to shoot a black police officer, and he dares him to attempt to take his gun. Just after Thomas Martin had approached the soldiers, a shot rang out, and Thomas Martin had been shot once in the chest, and the bullet had traveled through his chest and lodged in his spine. He fell to the ground, mortally wounded. Soldier, as well as other ones, scattered, and the soldier ran back to the old Citadel, where the 8th U.S. Infantry had been housed during Reconstruction. Another police officer who had responded went by, started to chase, and attempted to fire his weapon at Sergeant Johnson, and his gun misfired. After the shooting, Sergeant Johnson took off and ran towards the old Citadel, which is at Marion Square, and where the 8th U.S. Infantry had been housed during Reconstruction. Another black police officer had been responding to the shooting, running from another direction, and seen Sergeant Johnson running, and had pulled his weapon and attempted to shoot Sergeant Johnson, because the several people following him said, that man shot a police officer. The gun misfired, and he continued on and followed him into the Citadel, where Sergeant Johnson had attempted to hide. Lieutenant of the day asked what the situation was. Police officer said he had shot and killed a police officer. He quickly found Sergeant Johnson and turned him over to the Charleston authorities. After Sergeant Johnson was arrested, several other members of the 8th U.S. Infantry were also arrested. One was a Private Morgan, as well as 4 or 5 others. They were all held in jail, and the next day a coroner's inquest was conducted, in which, after multiple witnesses had gone through, including one who had attended Thomas Martin and testified that Thomas Martin told him that that man shot me, and pointed at Sergeant Johnson, who was running away. It was determined after the 2-day inquest that Thomas Martin had met his demise via murder committed by one William Johnson. William Johnson was then held along with the other ones until a grand jury could be convened. After the grand jury was convened, both Sergeant Johnson and the other soldier, the last name of Morgan, were both indicted on the charge of murder of Thomas Martin, where the other ones who had basically been witnesses were released. The trial came up in early March of 1871, and in March of 1871, the trial started, and after 5 hours of deliberation and testimony, Sergeant Johnson and Private Morgan were both found innocent by a jury of their peers. The state had called witnesses to the incident, a fact of which one was a lieutenant and multiple soldiers from the 8th U.S. Infantry, which had returned home to Wisconsin. They had to travel to Columbia, where the trial had taken place, and immediately after Johnson and Morgan were both found innocent, they submitted a receipt to the court for expenses for their travel, of which the court had to pay because they were called witnesses. After the trial, many people in Charleston, of the African American community, as well as the white community, were enraged that they were found innocent. Nothing much could be done. They had actually already left the state, and Thomas's family was basically left destitute, of which later they moved to Lincolnville, South Carolina, and lived out the days there. The family continued to stay in the Charleston area, of which, when I was tasked to find any living relative, found Miss Martin Carrington living in Charleston, who at the time was a very good friend of mine. Miss Carrington is beautiful. She's the great-granddaughter of Thomas Martin. I'm very glad that it was her. I love her dearly, and Mama Jo is definitely well worth the work.
Private Thomas J. Martin has become an iconic symbol to heal our city and heal our nation. We are extremely vigilant at this hour, recognizing that Private Thomas J. Martin's sacrifice did not die with him in 1870, but it has given birth now to an opportunity locally here for us in this area to begin to initiate actions that will lead us to a more peaceful Charleston and a more peaceful region where we are stamping out ignorance, hatred, bigotry, and all of those cultural pollutants that continue to become the cancer on our souls. We are in a battle in real time for the soul of our nation, for the soul of our city. And through this Heal Our City, Heal Our Nation initiative, we can begin to uplift the better angels of those within our society so that we can take back the decency, the dignity, the respect, the honor of each individual, regardless of those things that have historically marginalized or separated us. Private Thomas J. Martin becomes a symbol of how one can rise from obscurity and come into the forefront, where we are able to shine a bright light on those issues that continue to cause us not to come to the table of brother and sisterhood. We are so excited in this time that we can control the narrative moving forward by healing our city and healing our nation, not necessarily only through prayer and well wishes, but through brotherly and sisterly intentional actions of love that begins to move us forward in a direction that recognizes the individual differences that are among us and respects the diversity that exists in our midst. And so as we pivot to a more beloved community, we invite all of you to use the life, the symbol, and the legacy of Private Thomas J. Martin as the entry point to enter courageous conversations that begin to drive hate away and cause love to be the order of the day. With your help, we can heal our city. We can heal our nation.